Welcome to the Doom Scroll News Report here on Radio Taiwan International, where I, Hanna Belinsky, and my co-host,
Amanda Stevens,
two writers, political by necessity, cover some of the biggest international news stories dominating our news feeds from the last week. I'm Hanna Belinsky, and this week, we're tackling the United States government shutdown and the latest moves by Russia, in particular their drone shenanigans, as well as the story that just broke this week about how Taiwan factors in when it comes to Russian exports. Amanda, I know you've got to be pretty worn out this week being stand-in boss while Iris was on vacation. Do you have any plans lined up for some self-care this weekend?
It basically just boils down to not coming into work. I want to not come into work, and I want to disconnect again, and I want to play video games.
Ooh, what kind of video games are we playing?
Jared and I have this rule, my boyfriend and I have this rule that we can only buy new games after we finished a video game.
Wow,
and
very
so
disciplined.
I'm trying hard because I have a really to play, like a to read list, but to play list for video games. Between us, we finished 3 games. So now I want to play Sword of the Sea, just by the same people who did Journey. They're one of my favorite studios.
Okay.
And that's like a quick 2-hour game. And then I'm going to be starting Hades 2, which I've been looking forward to for like 2 years.
Are these all indie game developers?
I guess it is an indie developer, but it's from a larger indie studio.
I ask because I get vicarious pleasure from other people having free time to play video games.
I have felt that way this whole week.
I'm sure you're
just
dying.
need to like lay down and be quiet in a dark room.
Well, Amanda's not the only thing shutting down for now.
Which is too bad.
Yes, as of October 1st, the U.S. government shut down following a failure on Congress' part to pass new appropriations or any resolution to the funding of federal operations. Generally speaking, a government shutdown means only essential services like national security, air traffic control, social security payments, and certain health programs continue to receive government funding, while all non-essential, discretionary functions are temporarily suspended. This generally translates to a bunch of federal workers getting furloughed until further notice. And it's looking like about 250,000 of those federal workers are facing the possibility of being furloughed during this shutdown, while those working essential roles have to work without pay. All this from Anthony Zurcher, reporting for the BBC. It's funny, my father always wanted me to get a federal job because the benefits are good, but
because
after...
it's consistent.
Yes, it's
That's what
consistent.
I was told when I was a kid. Everyone says it's a consistent job with good benefits
good
and a
perks.
pretty good paycheck.
That's right, but after what this administration has done, I honestly do not think Fed work will ever be considered a sweet gig ever again. Maybe with the radio experience, they'll let me be a state mouthpiece in the new authoritarian nation of America. Praise be.
I don't think we'd make very good mouthpieces.
No, we
We're
wouldn't.
too mouthy for mouthpieces.
I would be guillotined or whatever they do, you know.
Guillotined.
Guillotined. I would be guillotined or whatever,
Yeah.
however they choose to execute. I just know that I would be eliminated. Before we get into it, though, do you remember the last shutdown, which was during Trump's first presidential term?
I remembered, here's what I will say. I remembered one shutdown, but when I was reading the Anthony Zurcher article, I think he said that they had 3 or 4 shutdowns. And I forgot about that many, which is shocking and makes me feel guilty of the small attention span we all suffer from today.
Well, the thing about the shutdowns, and we'll get into this later, is it kind of affects people disproportionately. So even though they happen from time to time, you or I may not feel the effects.
I forgot. I remember I was stressed out, though, because I had to get my passport renewed.
Oh,
And I had
see?
another friend who had to get their passport
There you
renewed.
go.
And so we were trying to calculate if we had sent it in early enough.
Oh, no,
And I remember
that's
also
stressful.
advising a friend, go get your paperwork done
Yeah.
and send it in right now. Because if the government shuts down, who knows when you're going to get your new passport?
Seriously. The last time was 2018. It was the tail end of 2018 into 2019. And I remember that was the first time I even registered the phrase government shutdown. And it's not that it was the only other one, because historically there have been shutdowns from time to time, but that one was notable for being the longest one at 35 days. So it was in the news cycle for quite a long time. The Dems had taken over the House in midterm elections, so there was a big partisan standoff about Trump's big, beautiful border wall, which he ended up unable to get his way with. This time, though, it's about federal spending and healthcare subsidies, and this shutdown also stands to be quite a bit more costly than the last go-around. We're looking at $15 billion lost in GDP per week of this. And also, it's not as much a partisan issue this time. Trump is doing his best to blame the Democrats, and although they do still factor in, they are still part of the government, the entire government right now, more or less, is controlled by the GOP. So, hello. How do you think this reflects on the current state of the Republican Party, given that this is primarily an intra-party issue at this point?
I was kind of paying attention to this because one reason we are in this mess, or another reason that we're in this mess, is because Congress was released early, or the Senate was released early on their break before they were able to even begin discussions about how to fund the government because they didn't want to release the Epstein files.
Slackers.
So they missed an extra, it was a calculated thing. They were hoping people would forget about it. Joey and I talked about it during August.
Interesting.
But that means that they had a shorter deadline also to then get this done. So I had kind of been looking at it for a long time, and I think the healthcare issue is going to be a big issue because I have seen notably like Republicans coming out and being like, I'm actually not a fan of this because like I live in a poor district, and even though it's not labeled Medicaid or whatever it is, like I know
their constituents would not be happy.
Most of my constituents are on it. And I looked up a quote from the New York Times. I cannot stress enough to people who are not Americans or have never lived in America, but just about every American is one medical health emergency away from being homeless.
Yeah, yes. And it's not an exaggeration.
No, and like my dad volunteers with the homeless. Like he helps at least one person for whom that's the case. Like that's what happened.
It's really sad.
So healthcare is a really big issue on keeping it affordable.
That's why I wanted to do Fed work, or wanted to do Fed work.
Previously wanted to do a Fed work.
Because of the benefits.
So the New York Times was saying that like if these benefits, which they're trying to slash, do expire, if there was a couple who were making $85,000 annually, their health insurance cost could more than triple, which would bring it up to $24,535 a year.
Yeah, that's like crazy.
That's crazy. So
put some coins into the crazy jar.
We need a swear jar. I'm going to start bringing it down for the Foley. And then we'll use it to go buy coffee or something. But yeah, I think it is going to be a big sticking point. And I think that I think and hope that the longer that this drags on, it will give those like maybe or fence-sitter Republicans more reason to push others to compromise. Because I think that this is the issue is healthcare. Yeah.
American healthcare is already famously inaccessible, and this just puts it at risk of becoming even more inaccessible. The Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, was, in my opinion, one of the better things to come out of the Obama administration.
I think it was the best thing.
Probably
honestly.
The best thing. If the GOP gets their way and the ACA is not renewed, millions of people could see their premiums go up in 2026, and some could lose coverage entirely. And what's more, Medicaid is also at risk of cuts and recessions, and Medicaid covers more than 80 million Americans, mainly low-income, seniors, and the disabled. So, Amanda, I guess the big question, the one neither of us can really answer, but I'd still like to get your take on it. How do you think this is going to end? What are they going to do?
I honestly am at a crossroads where I'm not really sure how it's going to end.
Okay.
I think
it's possible they'll just kick the can. They may just kind of slap a Band-Aid on it and hold things over until they can decide.
Yeah, I think if there is a deal made, it will in some way be a deal that just pushes this issue to a later date. I don't think it's going to be like a forever guarantee or even a guarantee that's long enough to go through Trump's presidency. But I'm not really sure how it will end because the Democrats only need to lose like 5 people, which is a very small number. And I know that the previous shutdown was averted because 5 of them were converted into voting for the deal by the head of the Democrats, the minority leader, that guy from New York.
Chuck Schumer, that guy from New York.
And while I disagreed with what he did there, his concern at the time was that the government shutdown gives the federal government more leeway, and the current federal government, which has already been slashed, to call out or look at workers, say that they're non-essential, and then cut them permanently, which Trump has already promised to do. And I think that that's a big issue. And I think that could really pressured Democrats into wanting to shorten the shutdown more.
Sure.
But I'm also kind of torn because, like, while this one is going to be really expansive, it's not a partial shutdown like the last one that we had was. It's shutting down huge swaths of the American government, and that includes like cultural outlets like museums. That includes
national parks,
which could be closed. It includes a lot. And I'm also still irritated that the congressmen are still getting paid.
Yeah.
During this.
Yeah, what's up with that? All
They should be losing their paycheck
essential workers are working without pay.
for free.
What gives?
Right. I don't want this to happen because it is very damaging. Unlike the last time that we had a government shutdown, if we were to just break it down to like numbers that are generated by the federal government, and I assume that this also goes towards numbers that then feed back into the system through salaries that employees get. Like there was like $11 billion lost over that month, and then
correct.
$3 billion that was never recouped. So that's just money lost. That again, for me in my mind, I'm trying to look at that as like how many workers lost a huge part of their paycheck.
Right.
That again, maybe you can't budget for it because you weren't expecting to lose your job. But I also don't know that the Democratic Party has any other recourse to try to fight this. And I do think that it would be a terrible idea to make a concession to make healthcare even more unaffordable. And I'm a lot more worried about that for like my family.
Yeah. That kind of brings me to my final point, because although obviously Democrats, they're still a factor in this, I think it's fair to say that a government shutdown is an obvious failure of the ruling powers, specifically, to properly govern. And normally, in a world ruled by logic, the party in power would be the one to shoulder more blame. And back in 2018, that was the case, as most people were sensible enough to fault Trump and the GOP. But do you think people can still see that the same way this time around? It probably sounds like a stupid question, but I'm becoming very cynical about whether people can react any other way but emotionally, given how polarized the American political climate has become.
And also given the fact that, like, for example, Trump won largely because people felt that living in America was so unaffordable. And you and I both traveled to America this year, and I feel like felt that viscerally. Like, it was crazy expensive. I don't know how people can exist.
I don't
like
either.
That
I had kind of
with
a crisis.
A family.
I was like, how am I going to move back here?
I was thinking the same thing. Like, I could not afford to live the lifestyle that I have now. And I live a very middle of the road lifestyle.
Me too. Same.
I feel like I live pretty frugally in a lot of ways.
Oh, I've always lived pretty humbly. So.
Yeah, but to get back on track, like, who will be blamed? I think that historically from the last like 4 years, the Democratic Party has suffered from like a huge inability to communicate effectively.
No kidding.
And then also to deliver on what is communicated across. And I don't know or think that has really been changed.
Yeah. Trump has really had a chokehold too on the narrative.
Right. And so I'm not sure. I also don't know, like, I'm sure that there are a lot of people who would be willing to fight for their health care premium to stay low. But I also think you have to look at it as like, can people afford to wait that out?
Yeah.
Right? Because again, this disproportionately affects people who are in the lower income bracket. And so even to that degree, it's like, do you have enough money saved up to be able to wait it out?
No kidding.
While you're not making a paycheck, while you're not being able to get like food stamps,
like
or while your Medicare
fund.
is like on pause, like while you don't have state preschools are out. So now what are you going to do with your kid while you're trying to go to work, while you're trying to do these things? So
what a nightmare.
I don't know that the Democratic Party will be able to communicate this effectively. I also don't know that there will be like an adequate payoff for the shutdown. It's trying to solve a break-in with a hammer. Like,
God, what an image.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, it's like it might solve the problem, but it is arguably the worst way that you could try to solve it. Like, I don't know.
Well, speaking of solving problems with hammers, or rather drones, I want to stop thinking about the United States for 5 minutes of my miserable life and talk a bit about Russia's escalating missile attacks and drone incursions and other provocative behaviors, not just against Ukraine, but in other neighboring countries.
Yeah.
In September, not only did they launch a record number of drone and missile strikes into Ukraine, 5,636 drones and 187 missiles, per David Brennan, writing for ABC News, But they've also been violating the airspace of certain NATO member states, among them Poland and Romania. Not to mention, they've been hitting nuclear plants, which makes everybody nervous. They've really been pushing the envelope. What do you think Putin's endgame is here?
I think that Putin's endgame has always been the same. And I think his endgame is to basically do whatever it takes to get Ukraine back.
Okay.
Because you and I discussed this right at the very beginning of the war. And I don't know if we were even doing doom scroll at this point. But I think that one of the issues is that now taking back Ukraine has been kind of tied in to Putin's reputation. And I think that that's something that leaders like Putin and Xi and Erdogan, like these authoritarian leaders, care about very dearly, more so than they do about the betterment of their country. Because, as I said when we were talking about Xi Jinping, they look at history as a long game.
Yeah, yes.
And so I think like messing up your country for like 5 years is something you can fix. That you can then like try to communication wash by saying like, this was the price we had to pay to get back our empire. This was a noble sacrifice for everybody, when it's not really a choice. It's not a sacrifice they're choosing to make, right?
Yeah.
So I think his endgame is the same. And I think that his goal was always to kind of do whatever it takes to get it back.
Do you think he's trying to test NATO's defenses?
It certainly feels like it, I would say. Between like the two ongoing wars that I know of right now, both have felt like consistent tests of global alliances.
Yeah, they're just
and
escalating and escalating.
Yeah, to really just see what it's going to take to make them snap, or how far they'll be allowed to go.
One of the bigger related news stories to break this week here in Taiwan, actually.
Oh boy, this was exciting.
Exciting in a bad way.
Yeah.
Which is that Taiwan has become the world's largest importer of Russian naphtha, which is a petroleum derivative used to make semiconductor chips.
One use of it.
One of them.
We helped break this story, so we had to do a lot of research into this.
Oh, good.
This thing.
Excellent. That's good for me anyway. So from February 2022, which is when the Russian invasion of Ukraine started, by the way, to June 2025, Taiwan imported about 6.8 million tons of Russian naphtha. That's about 4.9 billion US dollars worth of it. This was mostly bought up by Formosa Petrochemical Corporation.
A private organization, we should say.
Yes, which used to only get 9% of its naphtha from Russia, but as of the first half of 2025, they've been getting 90% of it from them. This obviously raises a red flag because, well, that's basically indirectly contributing to Russia's military activities in Ukraine. Plus, these other shenanigans they're trying to get up to now in Poland and other neighboring countries.
Something else that I should point out that the report also said is that the naphtha, although it is not petroleum, it's a petroleum derivative, has been used to make products that have then likely been sold to people who are, or to countries who are trying to sanction and embargo Russian products.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of helping to cross the picket line.
Yeah, it's basically a little loophole.
And that's allegedly, if this is true, that is also something that the report found.
Per Reuters reporting on October 2nd, Taiwan's foreign ministry has said that, quote, should international allies impose further restrictions on Russian energy products or other items, Taiwan will actively cooperate, demonstrating its unwavering resolve to oppose aggression and defend the international order, unquote. You know what? And I know you did this story, so you know about it. I found myself surprisingly disheartened by this piece of news. And it's not so much that I was under any illusion that money isn't the be-all, end-all in this world and the fight for freedom and democracy is just a farce. I didn't expect them to be so blatant. You know, how can Taiwan support Ukraine's sovereignty, then turn around and import just a diabolical amount of Russian energy? And you mentioned, technically, Formosa Petrochemical is a private corporation, and it's not beholden to the same rules as Taiwan's state-owned companies. But the government couldn't have not known this was happening, right?
I don't know.
I should say,
I helped to coordinate breaking the story. I didn't write our coverage of it, but I did read the report.
This is the part I want to know.
Joey Toll is the one who wrote our English Department article on it, so you can go read about it there.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it is sort of disheartening. I feel like it was really sort of two-faced, even if it was a private organization.
It's super two-faced.
Because in the same week that the story was released, our foreign minister was also over in Europe campaigning that it's far time that the EU and Europe support Taiwan in their bid.
No kidding.
At the same time, private organizations are undermining the EU's ability to blockade and try to support Ukraine.
Yeah, what's
which
going
is in
on?
a really similar position. So
That's why I'm so mad.
Right. And I mean, there are other countries who do import Russian oil products.